I was listening to the story about, it was a story of a family in Washington, and the little boy called the Bigfoot the Cowboy Man. And he had, apparently it had made an effort to steal this kid. And it hit me. My children were in that playpen behind me with nothing but a mosquito net over them. It could have crept up behind me and taken both of my children, and I wouldn't have known.
His father just got like a Mustang or something from Wyoming, okay? He had it out in the corral because he couldn't put it in the barn in the stalls with the other horses. It would kick and made all the other horses nervous. Had a Seminole Indian working the horse, trying to break it every day. So they had it out in the corral. This skunk ape snuck up behind this horse and grabbed it on its hind quarters. This particular horse kicks out, jumps over the corral, runs into the pasture, to get away. At this point, the rancher's out there just blasted away with the 30-30. Skunk ape runs into the swamp.
I went up there one day after that, or 2 days after that. I went up there and sat in the silence up there, and I'm telling you, man, it was free. It was crazy. There was a crazy vibe up there still. I did what I could to kind of get things under control, but I told her, I said, you need to get off this property. I feel like no matter how strong you are, it's almost like standing in the ocean. You can't stand still without moving your feet. You're going to get knocked over eventually, no matter how strong, whatever. You can't withstand a barrage of weird spiritual energy.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Paranormal Odyssey Live. I am Wayne, your host, joined, as always, by my great friend, co-host, producer, author, mother, grandmother, wife, extraordinaire, Miss Tiffany. How you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing okay. I'm being unprofessional as always, and I know you wouldn't expect me to be any less. Because I forgot to turn my do not disturb on. So let's just hope while I turn it on that nobody texts me or emails me.
Oh, my God. So unprofessional.
I know. And I'm kind of laggy.
Yeah. I should have put unprofessional in the description there, but I was trying to be complimentary.
Well, I appreciate all you reach out and try to do for me, but sometimes, brother, it just ain't no help for us.
All right. I feel like tonight may be over an hour because I got a couple of videos that we're going to share, talk about some interesting stuff. And you actually have an update from last week that someone actually already mentioned in the comments. So we're just going to jump right into paying all the bills and try to do it as quickly as possible. Guys, if you are new to the channel, if you would, please take a second, hit that subscribe button. We would absolutely appreciate it. Tell your friends, tell your family. Help us continue to grow. We would appreciate it. But it starts with hitting that subscribe button.
And if you would like to be on with Wayne and myself, you can reach out and get us, Wayne at paranormalworldproductions.com or Tiffany at paranormalworldproductions.com.
Ask everybody to head over to paranormalworldproductions.com. Check out our website. Check out all the other shows under the studio's umbrella. We mention them every week, so I'm not going to do that again. But pick up some merch. Join the blog. Check out all the blogs. Join the newsletter that is new and kicking ass out there. So, you do all of that at the website, which is paranormalworldproductions.com. Sorry.
And there isn't any need to put this up. However, if you have questions for Wayne and myself, just put them in capital letters. And like always, we'll snatch them and put them at the end.
Yeah, she said that because, obviously we had a guest lined up tonight, but lady canceled me. I guess she did cancel me, but she texted me first thing this morning and informed us that she wasn't going to be able to make it, her and the lady that she was coming on with. So we will get with her to reschedule, but we didn't want to leave you guys high and dry. So you get us again. and we're going to come on here and talk about some pretty interesting stuff, some missing people, actually. You guys know how I feel about that. I'm fascinated with these odd, strange missing people cases. Before we get there, though, everybody, just real quickly, I want to bring up the membership. If you guys have not done so already, and there's several of you that have not done so already, if you're interested in becoming a member and getting some extra content, we would love to have you. It's $1.99 a month. The first 50 people, we're at about 30, 35 now. But the first 50 people will be entered into a drawing, and one person from that drawing will win a Yeti lunchbox, an autographed copy of Miss Naomi Finn's book, an autographed copy of The Unfamiliars, written by the lovely and talented Miss Tiffany Duran, and also a t-shirt, Paranormal Odyssey t-shirt of your choice and color. But you cannot be included in that drawing unless you become a member and you fork out that $1.99 a month. I know it's asking a lot, guys, and I'm sorry, but $2, I mean, in all seriousness, come on. It's $2. And if we're being honest here, the reason you guys haven't done it is the extra work that it takes. Y'all don't care about the $2 extra bucks. It's the going through the process of clicking the buttons and becoming a member. But if you find it in your hearts to do that, we would appreciate it, and you will be entered into the drawing. Okay, you got anything else before we dive in, Tiffany?
No, that was very well said. I mean, we just need to call out the BS, put it in your face.
Well,
absolutely.
As everybody knows that was here last week, was it Tuesday that we did? It was last Tuesday we did the show. Our 200th
last Tuesday.
Episode.
Yeah.
It was our 200th episode. We talked about the gentleman that went missing for 30 years and came back, and you have a little bit to add from that show. Go ahead and throw that in there, Tiffany.
All right. It's and Alex had mentioned it before the show even started, and I was like, oh my gosh, look at that. I mean, he's like on cue. Stephen Kubacki. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I found this article, and you have to forgive me, I don't have all of it memorized like I did last week because I'm unprofessional, but we're going to get into it because it goes way further into everything. Stephen Kubacki was a student at Hope College, a small private Christian university near the southeastern shore of Lake Michigan, when he vanished in 1978. He had gone for a solo cross-country skiing trip, meant to be gone only a day, maybe two, but he never returned. He left a 200-yard trail of footprints in the snow, leading past the edge of the lake. The one-way path ended abruptly, leading investigators to conclude, in the absence of any other clues, that he had drowned somewhere under a thick layer of unbroken ice. First off, wouldn't it be broken if he had gone under? Yeah. I mean, that's just me. How he was first reported missing depends on who is telling the story. If you go with the local news report from February 21st of 78, snowmobilers, what is that word? That's not even a word. Snowmobilers and Saugatuck spotted cross-country skis abandoned with a backpack and contacted authorities, who immediately launched an air and land search. The investigators knew right away who they were looking for. He was 23 at the time, either a German or a history major, and set to graduate that spring. And then it goes on to talk about what he did in school. So then he was known to be an enthusiastic outdoorsman who had previously climbed mountains while studying abroad in Europe. He'd been cross-country skiing in the same area bordering Lake Michigan before. So this trip and everything he was doing was not out of the ordinary. He's done it many times before. Over a year after he went missing, so May 5th, 1979, it says he woke up in a grassy knoll in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, 700 miles due east from where he had vanished on a Saturday night. He had no memory of the previous 14 and a half months and said he didn't immediately realize how much time had passed until he bought a newspaper and saw the date. He found his way. Now, this is strange. This is strange, okay? He doesn't know how he got there, but once he realized what the date was, he realized where he was. He found his way to an aunt's house about 20 miles from Pittsfield, and from there he was reunited with the rest of his family. So he was interviewed, of course, after this, after he quote unquote woke up, and he told reporters that he had found himself wearing clothes that he did not recognize as his own, and his backpack was filled with maps and hitchhiking signs suggesting he had traveled wildly from Sacramento to San Francisco to Reno, Chicago, and then Utah. In his possession, he had $40 in cash, new glasses, new sneakers, and a t-shirt from a marathon from Wisconsin. And he said in the interview, "I feel like I've done a lot of running." His memory right up until his disappearance remained intact. He said the last thing he remembered was feeling cold and scared of being lost in the frozen darkness. He feels his blackout was caused by exhaustion and exposure, and he would go see a medical doctor, but refused to go see a psychiatrist. He insisted that he was in a healthy frame of mind when he set off for his skiing trip, and he still is. He remains alive and well today in the Pacific Northwest, working as a psychologist. He wrote a book called Meta-Mathematical Foundations of Existence. For decades, he had refused to speak about his disappearance with reporters. He has ignored my attempts to reach him, and his ex-wife told me unequivocally that she will not be speaking to anyone about his disappearance. It's very strange, but here it says, and people are trying to tie this in with his case. It says much smaller in area than the better known Bermuda Triangle. They're calling this the Lake Michigan Triangle because it has been the site of numerous unexplained air disasters, shipwrecks, and vanishings dating back centuries.
I still say portal.
Yeah, like I don't know how to explain that.
I don't know.
He doesn't remember anything. And it's like Vasali from last week. One person says, okay, well, when I talked to him, he remembered everything about his life before he disappeared for 30 years. And then it's like this guy, he remembers everything up to the time he disappeared. And then he wakes up 700 miles away, different clothes, money in his pocket, new glasses, new shoes, different clothes.
And how weird is it that his profession now is a damn psychologist?
I know, and he refused to do it.
Yeah, I wonder if that had anything to do. I wonder if he, like, up until that point, if he previously wanted to be a psychologist, or if because all this happened, it led him to want to become one.
Right, because from what I read that he did in school, it wasn't anything about this in this article. He played Dungeons and Dragons.
So he was a dork.
Yeah, it said, yeah, I mean, there's nothing in this description. You know, he was described as brilliant and a little more free-spirited than the average student at the conservative school, which explained why he lived off campus. But I mean, nothing indicating that he studied anything for this career.
I don't know. It's weird.
It's strange.
And Yeah, it's very strange. I'm glad that you were able to add to it. Again, guys, that was a continuation from our show last week, not necessarily having much to do with what we're going to talk about this week. What's up, Brian? I'm sure that you, Backwoods Horror Stories, if you guys aren't subscribed to Backwoods Horror Stories, what the hell's wrong with you? Get over there and do it. We would love to have you. But let's jump into tonight, what we're going to be talking about tonight. Got a couple of missing people that I want to talk about. The first one I heard a while back, and it's one of those cases that I haven't been able to get it off my mind. I'm sure a lot of it has to do with I'm such a big football fan, always have been, and this happened to a football player, a guy that actually made it to the NFL with the Baltimore Ravens. He won 3 national championships from while he was at a Division II school. The name of the school escapes me, but when I play the video, they'll announce it. They'll tell you it. But he won 3 state championships. I mean, at any level, that's impressive. It's impressive as hell. I mean, this dude is known for being big and tough, and quarterbacks are typically. He was a quarterback. Quarterbacks are typically known for being kind of pansy, sissy, don't touch me, throw the ball away and go down without getting hit. But this guy was completely different. He took the hits. He dealt out punishment. He was one of those quarterbacks that would lower his head and hit you instead of sliding to get out of a hit. His name was Cullen, last name Cullen Finnerty. Yeah, Cullen Finnerty. Again, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into this video. It's about 20 minutes. We'll talk about Cullen for a little bit, and then we will talk about another case. Got a couple of videos for you guys tonight. But, yeah, if you're ready, man, we'll just go ahead and start this one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did I share it? No. Add state. Here we go. Sorry about that.
When he disappeared under very unusual circumstances on a solo fishing trip on the Baldwin River in Michigan on the 26th of May 2013. Cullen was a very fit man, and according to all of the sources, he had an outstanding career as a quarterback. This was his passion from a young age, and he excelled at Brighton High School before moving on to play for the University of Toledo, and then reaching new heights from there, getting inducted into the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame in 2018. The first time we hear of Cullen's disappearance seems to come from the NFL.com. Authorities are searching for Cullen Finnerty, a quarterback who led Grand Valley State to 3 Division II National Football Championships. After he failed to return from fishing near his northern Michigan cabin, WZZM-TV says his family owns a cabin near Bray Creek State Forest Campground. The site is near Baldwin and about 65 miles north of Grand Rapids. Authorities say searchers found a small pontoon boat Finnerty was using to fish. He was dropped off by his family on that day, and to clarify though, he wasn't alone at the cabin, but was when he made the decision to go fishing. We have to get bizarre right from the get-go here, because something had gone seriously awry during this trip. The Lake County Sheriff's Department says Finnerty was having what the family described as an episode, and say he was scared and wandered into the woods. On the second day of the search, the 28th, one of the most successful quarterbacks in college football history was found deceased in the woods of northern Michigan on Tuesday night, 3 days after disappearing while out fishing near his family's cottage. His body was found about 8 p.m. in the woods within a mile of where he disappeared, said Lake County Undersheriff Dennis Robinson. The cause of passing wasn't immediately clear, but Robinson said that foul play wasn't suspected. He said the body was not in the water and was found in a wooded area in Weber Township, near the family's cottage. The search drew scores of police and volunteers, including staff and players from Grand Valley State. Finnerty last spoke to a family member that night in a phone call in which he said he was nervous about something, said Sheriff Robert Hiltz. At this stage, it's not completely clear what Cullen was becoming fearful of, but because of his call, his family members were obviously concerned for his safety and they contacted the authorities. They believed that he may have had some kind of mental episode, had seen something, or just thought he'd seen something that made him feel fearful before running off aimlessly into the woods. The sheriff had also clarified that they'd been tracking his cell phone in an attempt to locate him before the signal stopped, presumably indicating that the battery had run out, or possibly he entered an area where there was no signal. It's not clear at this point. This is also somewhat interesting too. When Cullen finished fishing, he called his wife and said he was scared. He then abandoned his equipment and ran into the woods. No contact has been established with Cullen since that phone call. Searchers discovered his pontoon boat at the scene, but it was empty. Search crews around the river and helicopter view of the woods have not been successful in finding him. Cullen was having what his family describes an episode, and say he was scared and wandered into the woods. His family says he suffered several concussions in his career, and they are concerned it may have triggered this episode. When he reported to his wife that he felt afraid, he'd also requested that they come and pick him up. Again, it's not clear what was happening or what he thought was happening, but when the family arrived to retrieve him, he'd vanished. It's odd that this came on so quickly, because from my limited understanding, when someone is having an episode like this, there are normally a few precursor signs that you can look for. You might notice that someone has become easily confused all of a sudden, seems a bit dazed out of nowhere, is repeating questions, and doesn't quite look like they're understanding what's happening. Just things of that nature. I suppose Cullen could have been incredibly unfortunate in that after leaving his family to go fishing, that is the exact moment it started to happen, and no one was around to see or notice.
Most people have no clue that in 2023, the best way to make money on Amazon is not with physical products.
It could be that if he was prone to these kinds of episodes, being alone in this wooded area might have spooked him and made him feel creeped out or panicky. At which point, you begin to have those thoughts of panic, and you provoke the spiral in doing so. You feel spooked, so you begin to panic, your heart starts racing, you want out of the situation, but you can't leave, and you end up going round and round, and it just gets worse. That is speculation, of course, and we have no real way of thoroughly understanding what exactly was taking place. Right, let's talk about the actual scene of discovery. We were walking a good line. I squatted down because we'd seen some trail. A girl shouted. She walked right up on the body, said Scott Boyd, who was on the search party that made the discovery. Cullen was found wearing fishing waders and a camouflage jacket. He was in the woods about half a mile north of where he disappeared while on a fishing trip. There were no apparent injuries and no signs of foul play, according to the sheriff. There was nothing obvious to us to the view of anything that would have caused his passing. Or in other words, Cullen had no injuries to speak of, thus the reasoning that foul play was not considered. It also seems that some of the family members were surprised in regards to the idea of some kind of mental breakdown, or some similar problem because there had been no prior indication. We had brats and hamburgers with Cullen on Saturday and grilled chicken on Sunday. Everything was cool. It was a great weekend. We had lots of smiles, a lot of laughs. There were no indications and there were no problems. It's also important to clarify that it was that very Sunday he disappeared. After having a good time, appearing happy and content and having food with his family, showing no signs of issue, he decided that he was going to go on that fishing trip Sunday night. The spot that he'd chosen to go to was around a quarter of a mile away from the cabin. At this point, we have to get back to the phone signal because I'd found mention of an unusual fact that makes things somewhat more difficult to understand, and it threw me off a bit because I just wasn't expecting this. So we're going to have to get weird again. The search for Cullen gained focus Thursday when a signal from his cell phone was picked up 11 miles north of his last known location, mlive.com reports. Cullen has been missing since Sunday night when he went fishing alone. Authorities are also using helicopters and dogs. Sources told mlive.com that volunteers and trained searchers were headed to the area where the phone was traced. Well, that certainly confuses things a bit, doesn't it? If Cullen's body was found within a mile of where he disappeared from, in what circumstances does the phone pinging 11 miles away make sense? Was it an error? Because otherwise, I can't think of a great explanation. Could it be that Cullen had initially made it 11 miles away, at which point he then headed back? That seems unlikely, because in that situation, you'd have expected the dispatch search group to find him. Actually, what do you make of that? I'd quite like to hear some other opinions on that one. It'd be interesting to know just how long into the search that was, and if they'd had any other pings before or after. I'd like to know what the timescale was of travelling this 11 miles, because he must have done it twice, because he was then found in an area less than a mile away from the fishing location. Or perhaps the source is just wrong? I don't know. Just to further compound the confusion in this incident, on the 29th of May, the autopsy reports were reported widely by the press. A cause of passing was not determined Wednesday after an autopsy on Cullen's body was performed. There was no obvious sign of heart trauma on Cullen Finnerty, said Lake County Sheriff Robert Hiltz. The autopsy ruled out anything real obvious, Hiltz said in a phone interview. There was nothing that stood out as the cause. We are glad there is no foul play at this time. Hiltz said Finnerty had called his wife and expressed concern about being out on the river. He was just uncomfortable about his surroundings at the time. He said that he was getting off the river and things went downhill from there. Specifically, it looks like he'd said that he had some concerns, which weren't expressed to my knowledge. He said that he was getting hit with brush and was getting off the river. It also seems like those in charge were expecting and hoping to find the cause during the autopsy, which obviously didn't happen. So you really can now suggest that there can't have been any injuries present at all. Okay, let's get bizarre. Cullen was found deceased in the woods of Michigan last night after going missing Sunday evening on a fishing trip near a family cabin. Now, the surrounding circumstances provided more new questions than answers. Wild blueberry plants and bracken fern dot the forest floor. Overhead, white pines reach skyward, straight up, 60 feet, 75 feet, maybe even more. Beneath their canopy, lesser pines bed to the forest floor. Somewhere near this spot, Cullen lost his way and he couldn't find his way out. Dave Kibbe owns this deep, 10-acre parcel. It extends directly 1/4 mile north of the state's Break Creek campground, where Cullen went missing Sunday night. It's hard to walk in a straight line, but you cannot walk half a mile without hitting a road. Isn't this weird, says Kibbe, 59, as he surveys the forest landscape 1/4 mile north from the campground where Cullen went missing. We watched this in 15 minutes. He does not understand. Cullen was here for 2 days after disappearing. Police say he was found Tuesday night and had no serious injuries. At Break Creek Campground, 2 self-described psychics pulled into the site. Elizabeth Red Wolf Krebs, 50, says she is a medicine woman with the Southern Cherokee Nation out of South Carolina. She says she can feel a presence and has something like nerve pain shooting up both arms. Standing near the river at a point where Cullen is believed to have gone missing. The back of my head is pounding. I feel like there is someone who is here with us. I feel it. Something happened. I feel it all over my body. God, it won't go away. It's strong, overwhelming. Both say they have tried to help local authorities before with disappearances. Now, of course, it's up to you how much emphasis you place on that and what they had to say. I'm perhaps a bit more conventional than that, but I'm not going to pretend like I know everything. Maybe something very unusual did happen. A number of merchants in Baldwin at the time did say that they'd been listening to police radio and wondered why it was taking so long to find it. They said that in these radio transmissions, apparently the authorities had said that Cullen had said that he was scared, that there were unfamiliar noises in the woods, and that someone was closing in on him. Interestingly, Dave Kibbe said that on the night of the disappearance, at around 7:30 p.m., he heard distant noises. I'm hearing yelling and shouting. I thought it was parents who let their kids out too late. It was way off in the distance. After hearing about what had happened, Dave returned to his camper in Break Creek to see if Cullen had perhaps let himself inside. He hadn't, but from what I understand, he was found not too far away from the camper. Okay, so this now raises more questions. Who was yelling and shouting? Was this Cullen, a third party of some description? Or was it, as thought, just completely unrelated? I've no idea what you even do with that. Cullen was found without any injuries, and a cause of passing couldn't be determined. This does suggest very strongly that there wasn't a third party involved. and also perhaps suggest that he was audibly struggling and fearful. However, as pointed out though, if you can't walk for half a mile in that location without coming to a road, what in the world happened? If Cullen was in the spot that he was discovered the entire time, that really does seem like he should have been found sooner. It's also not clear who exactly would have been closing in on him, given that again, there was no evidence to suggest anything like that had happened. On that point, we keep getting little additional pieces of information in regards to the phone call, and somehow the call keeps changing, though the message remains familiar. He said he was leery of some things. Sheriff Bob Hilt said Wednesday, "We are not sure what he was leery of. No one witnessed anything." It also sounds like, while the authorities weren't suspecting foul play publicly, were they acknowledging privately that this whole situation did seem a bit off? I'm not sure, but I can see why one might lean in that direction. Let's talk about the scale of the search too, and how that may accentuate the peculiarity of Cullen's disappearance. The search started the night of May 26 when Cullen went missing in the woods here, amid towering white pines and shrubby scrub oak trees and owls and white-tailed deer. By Monday morning, helicopters circled overhead as cadaver dogs combed through the brush below. By that Tuesday, the search party had ballooned to include 13 officers from Lake County, 22 reserve officers, and almost 100 location volunteers, and so many friends and family members that the assembled lost count. They fanned out in small groups separated by 100 yards, walking the same direction, crossing square-mile sections of the Weber Township grid. Some waded through waist-high swamps, others fought through dense foliage. I'd also like to add to that, I've seen it mentioned numerous times that alongside family, friends, the 100 volunteers, alongside all of the officials, there were over 100 players and coaching staff out too looking for him, so there's no wonder they lost count. To say that this was a monumental effort would be underselling it, and it's things like this that restore my faith in humanity. Everyone wanted Cullen found, and quickly. Right. Now I only bring this up because I have also seen it mentioned that some people were confused as to why it took so long to find him, given the area. I don't want to speculate too much about that, but the logic seems to be that if you can't walk half a mile in any direction without hitting a road, in theory, wouldn't that make it somewhat easier to find him? So why did it take as long as it did? Was he missed? Now, obviously, I can't answer that question, but I would like to acknowledge that it absolutely cannot be an easy task to find someone in the bush, surrounded by thick foliage and swampy areas, etc. You've really got to give the search and rescue personnel their due credit. The point is, though, while it is a good question as to why it maybe took that long, it's also important to keep in mind the complexities of the areas that you and I are often talking about. Right, now let's have a look at this. Continuing on in that article, as darkness approached on Tuesday, there was one final section the authorities planned to check that day. Cullen had been missing for nearly 48 hours. The group closest to the nearest road, near enough to hear cars purr as they drove past, assumed it would never find him as it stamped through backyards, past trailers, huts, cabins, and deer blinds. Martin's gaze shot in that direction, and there lay Cullen, face down, arms at his side, wearing olive waders and a camouflage jacket. So little about Cullen's passing made sense. How he complained of headaches and restless sleep in the days before he disappeared. How he went fishing by himself. How he ended up not much more than 100 yards from a road, out in the open, about half a mile from where he docked his pontoon boats. Right, I realise I've said it a few times now, but we do have to get bizarre again. His last two phone calls proved most haunting. One was to his wife, the other from his brother-in-law. Family members said that in both, Cullen sounded panicked. He said he was uncomfortable. He said that he ran into two men on the River Baldwin. He thought they might be following him. While we've acknowledged that you couldn't walk half a mile without finding a road, the fishing area itself was also somewhat secluded. Given that Cullen had been experiencing headaches and these kinds of problems, coupled with the fact that he was found completely uninjured, it seems an important point to question whether these men were actually present, or if Cullen simply thoroughly believed that they were, which I think it's quite clear that he did. Whatever he was seeing, or thought he was seeing though, must have been terrifying, because his friends and family described him as fearless. His friends dubbed him Superman and Rambo, and the point was made that it wasn't in his nature to run away. So whatever he saw really must have bothered him. I'm also glad that this was acknowledged again. People end up lost in this woods on a regular basis, Robin said, a few times a year. Normally, folks will walk around for a day or so, and then we'll bring them out, and they're fine, except for some scratches and bug bites. This was not a normal outcome. Officers found a vest, though relatives did not believe it belonged to Cullen. Cullen. They also found footprints a mile and a half north of where he was dropped off. They had a phone company ping his cell phone, and the results came back as far as 3 miles south and 5 miles north.
Sorry about that.
Still no answers, only questions. What was happening with that? And was the 11 miles just an error? It's not clear if the data was genuine or if there'd been errors involved here. One other problem too is that the timing of the pings haven't been shared. It's just interesting to me that it was moving miles away to the north and to the south at times. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. You could argue that if someone discovered Cullen's body, they'd taken the phone and then proceeded to move to the north and south with searchers around. Let's be honest though, I don't know how reasonable that sounds. Kibby actually made some more comments too. Kibby followed all the news reports, some of which speculated that Cullen went north from the campground into the woods. That would be Kibby's property, all the properties right next to it, where he cut through the brush. None of the reports made sense, Kibby thought. They said that Cullen walked more than half a mile north, and if that was true, he would have traversed all of Kibby's property. He would have hit another road. If he followed Bray Creek northeast, he could have hit a conservation property. He would have run into something, someone, in any direction he walked. Kibby tried to imagine where Cullen had passed away, how he arrived there. It's so hard to actually get lost in there, Kibby said. David Tuttle, a bow and arrow hunter, said that he'd seen black bears in the woods there, but he couldn't understand how Cullen had passed away in an open clearing that close to the road. He commented, "It's so close, it's eerie," just referring to the idea that he should have been able to make it to the road. It's very difficult to interpret the full circumstances of Cullen's disappearance, because there's one lingering point that you just can't really get around. That is, that it's incredibly difficult to make the case that it had any physical altercation or interaction with another person or animal in the area. This is because there was absolutely zero evidence, none, to indicate that that had transpired. Injuries and trauma would have indicated that possibility quite clearly. Now let's get to the final verdict on Cullen's disappearance and passing. A former college football star who disappeared in the Michigan wilderness during a fishing trip passed away due to hypothermia caused by inhaling his vomit after he became disoriented, possibly because of painkillers combined with having a degenerative brain disease. According to an updated autopsy released Thursday, the report said Cullen's anxiety and paranoia in the woods the night of May 26 may have been exacerbated by an elevated level of oxycodone and CTE, the brain disease that has been found in a number of ex-football players. CTE possibly affected his judgment, insight, and behavior, but there are other factors, including the use of medications prescribed by his doctor, that most likely contributed to the circumstances surrounding his passing. This autopsy also revealed that Cullen had a slightly enlarged heart and slightly cloudy lungs too. So in a very brief conclusion, it seems to me that there were a culmination of factors that merged and led to what happened to Cullen. It's not clear to me that that explains absolutely everything that happened here, but that is unfortunately all of the evidence that we have. Things like Kibby's comments of confusion over how any of this happened in the first place, the phone pings miles away, and just the confusion in general looks like it will never be answered clearly. So I suppose on that somber note, I'm going to have to hand it over to you in the comments below. Please do share your thoughts about the circumstances surrounding Cullen's disappearance. I do read all of the comments, so I'm looking forward to hearing fresh thoughts and ideas. Right, with all of that said, I'd just like to thank you for watching, and a special thank you to the patrons who allow me the time to do this. If you found the video...
All right. A lot to unpack there. What are your thoughts, Tiffany?
Well, I only had a brief amount of time to look at this. So hearing about there being other screams and shouting, so there was was there somebody else in the woods too? And then his phone being...
When I heard the other screams and shoutings, I'm a Bigfoot guy. I make, no excuses for that. That's always where my brain goes. I mean, is it possible they were hearing vocalizations? Because I originally heard about this from Missing 411. Y'all know how we feel about David Paulides. I don't know the man personally. I only know what people have told me about him. and what I've seen with my own eyes, I don't have that strong of an opinion about the man, but he is Bigfoot. I don't care what anybody says. He goes to these Bigfoot conferences for a reason. He is a believer. But he thinks that these people missing 411 cases have something to do with Bigfoot. So I don't know. When you started hearing about people screaming and stuff, I start thinking about vocalizations. And what I had heard before was he didn't clarify that it was two men that were after him. It was two things. Like he said, they were closing in on me. They're closing in on me. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So it's almost like something was chasing him. And then in one part of the video was talking about how he was filling things out through his body, which could be indicative of if we are going over to the Bigfoot world in this infrasound. Right?
Yeah, and he also made the comment about they were throwing stuff at him. Like
Right.
throwing, I don't remember what they said, but he said they're throwing stuff at me. That's another sign. You know, people say the Bigfoot throws shit at you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, probably the biggest thing. His phone was pinged 11 miles away. And then his body was found, like, what would they say, 100 yards from where he went missing?
Yeah.
And where he was missing, you couldn't walk a half a mile in any direction without running into a road. This man wasn't lost.
Right.
He was not lost. This is, from everything I gathered, this was an area to where it was fairly easy to get to a road. You get to a road, you're safe. You just follow the road until you see a car, and then they help you. And they talked about, one of the things they talked about being the most disturbing was how close to the road he was actually found.
Yeah.
This case is just weird, man. I
Right.
don't know what to make of it. I don't want to have Bigfoot on the brain. I don't, and I'm not saying Bigfoot had anything to do with it. Again, you got to throw in he had oxycodone in his system. That's a powerful pain reliever. He also had the CTE, which is the traumatic brain injuries from that football players have from having a lot of concussions, getting hit in the head a lot. Was the pain meds mixed with the severe brain injuries? Does that impair your judgment and your ability so much that you can't make it a half a mile to a road?
Well, my thing is this, and Teresa asked this question when the video was playing, and she said, well, why did the family let him go? Okay, so if you remember back to the video, they had just had this great weekend, and he was with the family. They were all hanging out and eating and just relaxing. There was no indication that he was impaired.
Right.
So there would be no reason to not let him go, because there was nothing that would, be hindering him.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't fault the family at all. There's no way they could have seen this coming.
Right. And I looked up, it's, I must make sure I can say this. It's chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And it says here, when you have it, it manifests in different ways in different people. People with CTE may have trouble remembering things and concentrating. They may have changes in their behavior and personality, including violent outbursts, increased frustration, mood swings, and lack of interest in people and things they previously cared about. The family may not notice significant changes at first. The first symptoms could be mild memory loss, headaches, irritable mood, slurred speech, or unsteadiness when walking. Later in the disease, memory, mood behavior, and problems with speech are the symptoms.
Okay. Yeah. Bristol here says, I don't know about anyone else, but when I've been on oxycodone, I felt like doing much else but laying on the couch binge watching TV shows. Yeah. That's fair.
It's I don't know, So when they did the autopsy on him, I don't know. I mean, they noticed he had a slightly enlarged heart, and then the CTE was found, and I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure that the oxy was given for the headaches. But could it be that they are basing the reason for his passing on the findings that may not have been found before the autopsy? Like, was that the first time his CTE was even noted? And they
I
just
don't
happened
know.
to.
That's a good question. It's a really good question. But we gotta remember that the cause of death was pneumonia.
Mhm.
Pneumonia from him inhaling his own vomit.
Yeah.
I don't know. The case is just weird to think about a professional athlete in great shape
Mhm.
getting lost in the woods and dying from pneumonia from inhaling his own vomit and not being able to make it, when he was so close to civilization. It's just something weird. It's something, and we're never gonna know. That's
Mhm.
the shitty part of this. This isn't a TV show where we sit through, 50 minutes, and in the last 10 minutes they tell us exactly what happened, and we find out what happened. Well, we're never gonna know what happened to this dude, and
Yeah.
that sucks.
Yeah. And if you want to continue to traverse down the Bigfoot rabbit hole here, you can absolutely go to encounter after encounter of people getting disoriented in the woods and not knowing which way is which.
Yeah, infrasound maybe.
Hmm. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, we're never gonna know. We do have another case to get to. We're going to share another video. I don't think it's quite as long as that one, but it's still pretty long. But before we get there, I want to bring attention to Bristol Super Sticker, as well as Troy with a super sticker. Thank you guys so very much.
Thank
We love
you.
y'all. Appreciate everything that you do, all the support. Thank you so very much. Anybody else want to throw some money at us? We will take it.
We'll hold up our little cup.
All right, the next case we're going to get into, the gentleman's name is Thomas Messick, I think is the best way to put it. So, or how it's pronounced. This one again is interesting. He was an older gentleman. We got a video that we are going to share with you. Let me get it pulled up here, and then we will shut up and let y'all enjoy this one as well.
Thomas Messick Sr. was 82 years old when he went missing on the 15th of November 2015. The disappearance of this seasoned hunter in the dense wilderness of the Adirondack Mountains in the state of New York has baffled search and rescue professionals and investigators alike. Tom was an ex-paratrooper and an experienced outdoorsman who walked into the woods south of Brant Lake near Lily Pond with 6 of his friends and family members. They set out to pursue deer and bring back the spoils, but during this outing, he would never be seen again.
Pursue deer.
Tom had always been known as a highly competent man that had a lot of practical skills in life, not just in the outdoors, but was something of a handyman too. His loved ones described him as a fiercely independent person who was loved and popular in the community. It seems that he was a very friendly and a well-liked person all round. Calling Tom a seasoned hunter isn't overselling his abilities either. He'd been doing this for many long years and had taught his 3 sons how to do it. He'd also help and teach others how to navigate and hunt successfully in wilderness areas in order to help them get their license. All in all, those nearest to him said that he was unbelievably good in the woods. With that being said though, in his older age, he wasn't without problems anymore. Tom sadly had an accident years prior that made him blind in one eye, and his eyesight in general wasn't so great anymore anyway. It was a similar story with his hearing too, and based on what I can find online, I believe he required hearing aids at this stage. Moving to the day in question, he and his 6 companions, comprised of friends and family, set out towards Brant Lake for the first time. They all had walkie-talkies, but had never hunted in this area before now, and he, along with the other 3 older members of the group, set up shop at the bottom of a hill. Their role was to be what's known as a watcher. They are stationary, and the plan was that the 3 younger members of the group were to go around the hill before coming back up over and down the hill towards the watchers. The idea was to push any deer they could find down the hill towards the watchers, who would then bring the hunt to a close. They initiated this plan at 12 p.m. Strangely, on this day, there were no deer in the area.
It's nothing like a little confidence boost to help ease you back into the dating scene. It also includes having a smile you feel good about. Fortunately, Aspen Dental specializes in dentures and implants made just for you, helping our patients.
Using commercials. Oh, what happened here?
I'm something of a magician, inventor, and chocolate maker.
Oh, what a design! Woolly's chocolates are incredible.
Really?
Try one.
I'm not sure where Wayne went, guys. I can't
Max
see
is
it.
bringing you the hair-raising,
Yeti sweat?
Yeti sweat, mind-blowing
What are you talking about?
tale of how it all began.
Welcome to Wonka's.
Wonka, now streaming exclusively on Max.
Oh no. I don't know where Wayne is. Just skip that. Here we go.
In fact, according to those present in the group, they never saw any wildlife at all, which was described as odd, not only by the group, but by other personnel who would later be involved in the search and investigation. This is one element of the situation as a whole that many believe makes the disappearance just that much more odd, because there was perhaps this element of unusualness to the area. Now, the 4 watchers were said to be spaced apart somewhere roughly between 150 to 200 yards from one another at the bottom of this hill. The area was forested, so I don't believe that they were able to see one another, and each of them took the role as watcher seriously, as they were an integral part to the whole process. Without them, the whole plan would have just fallen apart. Tom's family, present and otherwise, as well as his friends, stated very clearly that he would not just have up and left his post. Yet, when the 3 younger members arrived at the bottom of the hill, without being able to find and head any deer at all, they made their way towards the watcher's general position, and over the walkie-talkies, stated that they'd had no luck and it was time to meet back up where they'd parked the vehicles. At 2 p.m., everyone began to make their way there, and they all met up again at the trucks. All that is, except for Tom. What's weird about this is that Tom never used his radio to signal for help or anything to that effect. As the remaining 6 waited patiently at the trucks, they quickly realized that something was wrong. The 3 older members, I believe, stayed by the trucks, while the other 3 re-entered the forest in the direction of Tom's watch position. They went right to that exact spot where Tom was stationed and saw nothing. He wasn't there, and there wasn't any kind of an indication as to where he might have gone. Just for the sake of clarity, all of his equipment was gone too. Everyone was dumbfounded, as they didn't believe that he would have just gotten lost, and from what I can tell, this had never happened before. There was no evidence of animal predation or some kind of attack. Everyone split up, and one of the men at the trucks drove their way out of the area to call for help, which was achieved at 4:30 p.m. Meanwhile, the men inside the forest were trying to make as much noise as possible to get Tom's attention. They called for him. They ejected shells towards the sky to help Tom locate them, but none of it worked. They never saw or heard anything. This search went on for 4 hours until darkness began to fall and last light came at around 7:30 p.m. It was at this point that they realized they needed to change strategy, and instead they got in their trucks and began to drive up and down the roads with their high beams on while honking the horn. They fully believed that they were going to find him. They just assume now that he must have wandered off in the wrong direction. As the professional search and rescue members arrived, their effort began, and as more and more time went on, things began to look bleak, and no one had any idea as to what happened to him. Search dog teams were going in from all different positions. They went right up to his exact last known position where he was sat waiting for the deer. The dogs couldn't find a scent leading out of there. To everyone searching, this didn't make sense. The whole forest area, including areas that were further out, were grid searched extensively over and over again without producing a single result. It was almost as if he'd vanished exactly from the spot he was sitting down and left absolutely no trace behind at all. As said, there were no signs of animal predation, and Tom was getting on in life now, so it's not like he could walk any kind of extreme distance at this point in his life. How, in this situation, was it that he was able to evade hundreds of searchers? It almost doesn't even seem feasible, yet there everyone was, completely unable to find even a hint of him. There was another oddity to this whole incident too, in addition to the complete lack of animals in the area. As the three younger members were making their way around and up the backside of the hill, another watcher who was waiting at the bottom of said hill stated that he heard something weird. He said that he heard a sound that he found difficult to describe. He said that it was completely out of place in the woods, and he hadn't heard anything quite like it before while out in the wilderness. He said that this sound was quick, it didn't linger, and wasn't present for long at all. This man believes that the sound emanated from the direction of the hill that the other three younger members were to ascend. He stated that if he had to guess, it originated around 150 yards away in the direction of the hill, which of course would also be 150 yards or so away from all of the other watchers, roughly in the direction that they were all facing. While trying to describe the sound, it was stated as being like a snap or crack sound, somewhat like a big trap closing or something similar. Sadly, I couldn't find any further extrapolation or description of this sound, but what is interesting is that Under Sheriff Sean Lamore, who was present during this ordeal, also stated that the whole area seemed to be devoid of any wildlife, and he too said that was very odd.
That's weird.
One can only assume then that presumably means that wasn't typical or to be expected in this area. State Forest Rangers and volunteer searchers returned Tuesday to deep woods around Lily Pond to resume the search for Tom. Volunteers worked with rangers but found no clues as to his whereabouts as of late Tuesday afternoon. Search leaders estimated 130 or so people were involved in the initial search. The area being searched is remote, big country. There are miles of trails and very little in the way of civilization between Brant Lake and Lake George. Ranger and state troopers, aided by dogs and a state police helicopter, have searched since the day of the disappearance to no avail. This is interesting right off the get-go because Tom was wearing camouflage clothing, which the search leaders took note of and said that it would likely be difficult to see him. One might assume then that is why they brought in a large search dog presence immediately, because while camouflage might make it more difficult to see him, it wouldn't interfere with the ability of the dogs to use scent to sniff him out from wherever he was. However, and as was said earlier, to everyone's surprise, the dogs simply could not find a scent anywhere in the immediate area of Tom's disappearance. It seems as though there was just nothing for them to follow. They searched and researched the same area leading away from his last known position in all directions in a grid-like manner, and they only found out from there covering further ground. Searchers said that they had to wade through some particularly harsh terrain. They went through swamps that would reach up to their chests, but even so, he just wasn't to be found in any of these more harsh areas either. It seems that his family didn't believe that Tom would have entered these areas in the first place, because as said earlier, and despite his age, Tom was actually very good in these kinds of areas. His family stated that his general common sense was very good, and had he have been in any kind of trouble, he would have tried to reach his companions. one, through means of the walkie-talkie, or two, by ejecting shells towards the sky, as the other men tried to do initially to help guide Tom back to them. None of this happened though. It seems as though Tom never used the radio, or at least none of the men ever heard from him, and they never heard the latter either. 4 days into the search, a couple of FBI tactical officers arrived at the scene of the disappearance, who stated that they were there to provide some or other kind of technological support. There was a lot of confusion surrounding their presence because they generally do not involve themselves in a missing persons case unless there is evidence to suggest that a crime has been committed. Though I do believe that there is more leeway when it comes to a missing young person. I actually found some direct quotes on this from a former FBI agent of 26 years named Jerry Williams. Here's what she had to say. Just because an adult has gone missing doesn't make it a crime that requires a response from law enforcement. People are allowed to just walk away from their former lives to start a new life without telling anyone of their plans. However, if there is evidence that indicates their disappearance may have been the result of foul play, a missing persons case will be initiated by law enforcement. The FBI will officially open and lead a missing person investigation when 1. Foul play is suspected and the person's last known whereabouts was on federal property, or 2. The missing person is a US official elected or otherwise appointed. Most often, the FBI's participation in a missing person case is based on a request for assistance from local law enforcement or the state, among others. This is interesting because Jerry says specifically that foul play must be suspected for them to get involved, and 2, that their participation is usually based on a request from those already investigating, essentially. In this instance, there was absolutely no evidence left behind whatsoever to suggest any form of criminality had taken place. I also couldn't find anything to confirm that their presence had been requested. So, why were they there? Tom's wife said that these agents told her that they felt that something was definitely not right about this disappearance. It's not clear to me exactly what they meant by that. They followed up with her by saying that they wouldn't know what was not right about it until a body was located. I can see what they're getting at though. You have an elderly man that shouldn't have been able to get very far, and yet he somehow managed to disappear so thoroughly that the dogs, nor thermal imaging equipped helicopters could even find a hint of him. Thus, I suppose you can only reason that may be precisely why they showed up to investigate. You have an incident that makes no sense whatsoever. You have this elderly man that had vanished without a trace and nothing was being uncovered. Searchers did expect to find at least a trace of him. They stated that animals generally do not touch or move the equipment that he was carrying, and those items wouldn't have degraded over time. Perhaps these odd elements of the disappearance led them to believe or suspect that Tom had been taken by some kind of third party. How on earth this would have looked in the middle of the woods, I have absolutely no idea. I obviously agree with the investigators' assessment that animal predation had not occurred in this situation. There would have been signs all over the place had that been the case. There was no disturbed ground, no drag marks, no shredded clothing, or anything else. It was as if he'd been taken from that spot. If a third party taking Tom was in fact the running private hypothesis or suspicion, it seems to me that something must have happened when the younger three were ascending the hill. It must have happened before the entire group made radio contact with one another, because as far as I can tell, no one at any stage heard from Tom. So it seems to me at least, Tom had already vanished somehow before the group had made their way down the hill. It seems that had he have just wandered away, firstly, there would have been some radio contact, or he'd have used his equipment as a means of getting people's attention. And secondly, I firmly believe that this search effort would have uncovered him had that have been the case. So the ultimate question then is, I suppose, were the FBI fully aware that the circumstances did not make sense and that there was an air of unusualness to this whole case? Is that why they were there? If that is the case, that means that to some degree, they may very well be aware of some of the more unusual disappearances that have been covered over the years. Or they actually did just suspect foul play, but never really made that explicitly clear for whatever reasons they had. State Forest Rangers, State Police, Warren County Sheriff's Office personnel, State Conservation Officers, volunteers, and FBI tactical officers spent a fourth day searching for Tom, but found no clues as to his location. They planned to go until dark Wednesday and resume Thursday despite a rainy forecast. David Winchell, a spokesman for the State Department of Environmental Conservation, said the searchers expanded the area that was being searched Wednesday to include area they had not looked over earlier in the week. These areas were further out, and they didn't actually believe Tom could have made it there, but because they had already scoured the area extensively at this point, it seems to me that they were running out of options and had to try something, anything. The weather actually quite suddenly became worse 2 days prior on the second day of the search, and everyone involved had to endure quite heavy rains beating down on them as they looked for him. This, of course, slows down the search effort in general, makes it more difficult, and it obviously becomes more dangerous too. At some point in the search, I'm not quite sure when, but people were said to be dumbfounded by the set of circumstances that they were presented with, and questioned whether Tom might have gotten out of the woods, arrived at a road, and then perhaps may have been involved in an accident. All of the roads, which each were quite the trek from Tom's last known position, were searched, and still there was nothing to suggest this outcome. Searchers then said that they'd covered almost every inch of ground, standing almost shoulder to shoulder while walking in large lines throughout the grid layout of the forest, and Tom was just not present.
During this time, divers also entered Lily Pond, all nearby streams and swamps, and still never found anything. This search was massive. It included hundreds of people from over 60 jurisdictions who all wanted to help. Experienced search dog teams were provided from all over the place, and as mentioned already, helicopters had been overhead the entire time. Sean Lamore noted that the whole ordeal was odd because you'd think that they would have found some trace of him, but as we've been over, this didn't happen. I found this quote, which shares a similar thought to the one I expressed earlier. Messick's disappearance has confounded searchers who can't figure out how a man with extensive health problems could have gotten far enough or gotten to a secluded enough spot to have not been found by dozens of trained searchers for nearly a week at this point. It's important to say also that locals, searchers, Tom's friends, family, and companions that day all expressed how odd this situation was, which I thought spoke volumes about this particular disappearance. No one seemed to have any great hypotheses, including the FBI agents who told Tom's wife only that they felt something was definitely not right. I know that some may feel that because of all the circumstances we've discussed so far, that the companions he was with must have had something to do with it, but there was just no evidence in support of that. The group Messick was with have been assisting with the search every day, Simpson said. They were questioned by state police the day after Messick was reported missing, and investigators said there is no indication of foul play. The men had been together from a camp near Hague, but had not been around Lily Pond before. I personally do not believe that his companions had anything to do with his disappearance. The official search for Tom ended on the 26th of November 2015, 11 days after he vanished, but volunteers did continue after this time until it was realised by more and more people that he was just not going to be found. Though I believe that a small handful of people did search every so often through the years and still never found anything. Forest Ranger Rick Schroeder said, "We thought we'd find him that night, and if not that night, the next day." Rangers with global positioning satellite receivers went through shoulder to shoulder. They checked woods, thick brush, sides of mountains, swamps and ponds to no avail. An area of 8,000 acres had been searched, and more than 2 weeks later, not a clue as to where Messick went has been located. Schroeder said, "We're going to maintain a presence there. It's baffling." We won't know what happened until we find him. 2 months after Tom vanished, searchers are no closer to determining where he went, and a family member said that they have no theories of what could have happened to him. David Winchell said, "There's nothing new, our guys are stumped." Tom's son, Thomas Messick Jr., said that the family has no idea what could have happened. The State Police Bureau of Criminal Investigation looked into the companions early on and concluded nothing was amiss. The investigators who interviewed the witnesses know their stuff, and if there had been anything strange there, I'm confident they would have sniffed it out. Finally, there was a relatively popular sinkhole hypothesis that spread in relation to this disappearance. Water running underground can cause erosion, which can result in a sinkhole. The idea goes that one must have formed over time in his general vicinity. He'd unknowingly applied his weight to it, which caused it to collapse and swallow him, which would then have been quickly covered by earth. The response to this idea generally seems to be that evidence of such a sinkhole would have been found given how extensively the area was searched, especially the point from which Tom was sitting. I don't know enough about sinkholes to make any relevant comments about that, other than sharing the general gist of that little back and forth. Ultimately for me, I think the key lies in the fact that there was an FBI presence to a disappearance in the woods in which there was absolutely no sign or evidence of foul play at all. Either they were in possession of further evidence or information that was just never shared publicly which pointed in the direction of foul play, or there was another reason they were there. Interestingly, if there was information that they were privy to, it doesn't seem like they made the sheriff's office aware, only stating that they were there to provide technological support. That's the real oddity to me, especially when you pair it with the other, somewhat ominous factors. Why was there a total lack of wildlife in the area at the time, which was reported by numerous sources who were in the area? That being, the actual group of 7, or now 6, that came back. And the undersheriff also made a note of that later. And this odd, quick noise that was heard, what was that? It was said to be completely out of place. Was there a link between the source of this noise and the lack of an animal presence? It's understandable why there might have been a lack of wildlife during the search. I imagine a large presence of people would scare them away, but I'm not sure why beforehand. Perhaps there were other groups out, also on the day of, or before the disappearance, that were loud and scared a lot of the wildlife away? I've no idea. Anyway, I've reached the point now where I'm just speculating, and it seems that I've exhausted most of the information in regards to Tom and the disappearance. So, I'm going to hand it over to you in the comments below. What are your thoughts here? I'd just like to take the time to thank you for watching, and a big thank you to the patrons, who I'm very grateful for, and who've been running around on the screen. Thank you all very much for helping me to make these videos. If you found the video interesting,
there you go. What are your thoughts, Tiffany?
It's bizarro. And you were asking why the FBI was called, and we've been chatting in the chat, and Blue said because they had said that they were talking about where they had figured there was foul play, and he said that's not quite true. It does not have to be any foul play for an FBI investigation. We were requested many times just because of our expertise in man tracking and tactical planning. Also on federal property, which is that around Ondax is like state, but the SOPs may be the same. Standard operating procedures may be the same. But it's their SOP for rangers to notify the FBI regardless of the known facts.
Yeah, I mean, people can say what they want. They can speculate what they want, but the way I feel, if the FBI is there, there's something. There's some reason that the FBI is there.
And he also said we have found missing elderly as far away as several states and not know how they managed to travel so far. It's just bizarro. He goes missing.
The no wildlife at all.
That's
not normal.
Yeah. It's like, major predator is out there. And then the metal clank sound. And I was telling them in chat that the main, what does that come from? Somebody said, is that like an alien, or is that like, a portal opening?
I've
Because
talked
you hear
about it
that.
so many times. That's one of the things that baffles me the most. And the actual things that I have experienced, going out on investigations with Manimal, there's been more than a couple of times. Most of them, just about all of them, have been on Pigeon Mountain in North Georgia, where I heard, not just me, but everyone that was with me heard a metallic sound. Like I've always said, in my head, it puts me in the mind of like an old swing set, like a rusty swing set. And I've heard these things before out there. And in the middle of the woods where there's nothing metal, the only thing metal in the area are the automobiles that we use to get there.
Right.
How are we hearing these metallic sounds? And I've heard them on, like, in the middle of nowhere, like on hikes that we were doing in the middle of the night where there was nothing else around. We hear this metal sound. How do you explain that?
Yeah. And that's what I was telling them, that the majority of the time that I hear it, it's coming from the LBL.
Yeah.
Yep. Just these strange sounds. I don't know.
I don't either. And I don't think we're going to know. There's weird shit going on out there. I don't think these people are just disappearing. I don't know.
Yeah, this one's.
Did you notice a burning wire top smell? I don't remember that. No, I don't. I'm interested to see what your thoughts are, though. Yeah, I don't remember any type of like burning smell at all when I heard these things. But again, it wasn't just me. It was several people that were with me that heard these things. I don't know.
It's strange. I want to give Shania a shout out, a $3.99 super sticker.
Oh yeah, heck yeah, bruh.
Yes. We love it.
Yeah. Showing out. Miss Super Shania 81, $3.99. Had to show the boys up.
That's right. Because it is just like Brian said on that Bigfoot podcast, because women are smarter than men. And that came from Brian's mouth.
It did.
Yep.
It really did. All right. I think we can all agree this is creepy as hell. And I mean, as somebody that gets out in the woods and looks for Bigfoot and goes hiking and all this stuff, I mean, it's creepy. It makes me think twice about getting out there. I mean, both of these cases tonight, in my mind, could be attributed to portals. And how do I know that I'm not going to be walking along one day in the woods and step into one of these things?
You need some kind of tracking beacon.
Yeah. I mean, something. I don't know. It's creepy as hell to think about. And especially when you tie in the last episode where people went missing for years and then came back.
Yeah.
There's something going on.
Hey, I'm just going to throw that up there for you guys. Blue said, Tiffany, if you really want to get under the guy's skin, you can mention that statistically women are better marksmen than men.
I don't care. I ain't going to argue with you.
Well, I'll be the first one to tell you that I don't recall ever firing a weapon. So, and I'll be 44 soon. So all the men got me covered in that one.
Mr. Tiffany needs to take you shooting.
Yeah, he's got a 40.
In July, I'll have a couple of firearms with me. So we'll get you shooting something.
As long as they don't have a huge kick. I don't want to like dislocate my shoulder or something.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
that would be a story and a half. What happened to you? I don't want to talk about it. I'd never live it down.
we'll figure it out. We'll work something out. All right. Good stuff, guys. I appreciate everybody hanging out with us tonight. It wasn't a conventional episode where, typically we have a guest, but we did the best with what we were given, and I think it went pretty well. Again, thank you, everybody, all the super stickers, everybody that helped us out tonight, all of our members, our loyal subscribers. We appreciate it. We love you guys. Thank you so very much for all that you do. Tiffany, if you don't have anything else, say your goodbyes.
Nope. Just that I hope to see you back on Tuesday the 12th. Ideally, we're supposed to have a guest from the Boyd House of Horrors. So we'll see. But we'll be here.
Yeah,
so
we will be here.
Yes. Thank you for coming and for the super stickers and all the love. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you so very much. Again, thank you for everything that you do. All of the love that you continue to give us, we give it right back. Thank you for all that you do. Until we see you guys again, y'all take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Bye.